Hola. Nervioso, es mi primer keynote. Queríamos, justamente, hablábamos con Fisa de tratar algunos temas que son más del lenguaje en sí. O sea, faltó la charla de Facundo de Python 3. Por ahí queríamos hablar de Python 4. ¿Existe eso? No. Bueno, vamos a ver. Queríamos hablar de Python en muchos cores corriendo juntos. ¿Existe eso? No sabemos. ¿O hay alguna tendencia o hay alguna forma de hacerlo? Bueno, queríamos tratar un poco de eso y un poco de AsyncIO. Y es como que yo todavía no tengo toda la experiencia como para hablar de todos esos temas. Entonces lo que terminamos haciendo es consiguiendo un amigo de un amigo que accedió a grabar una charla, y como queríamos que sea sorpresa, tiene que estar afuera de PR. Entonces buscamos un chango que está afuera de PR. Veremos, o sea, creo que tiene más idea que yo. Así que bueno, les pongo el video y disfruten.
Hello everyone. Hello PyCon Argentina. I am Guido Van Rossum. You want parallel execution of Python. Well, I sort of have the feeling that that is always going to be delegated to special libraries or sort of things like numerical Python, where of course you can have specific operations that use all your CPUs. But writing Python code that is just like random Python code that runs on all CPUs at once is just incredibly difficult. Okay. People smarter than me have broken their head on trying to come up with ways to do that, and so far everyone has sort of very, very tentative results. Like there's one guy who works for, I think, the New York Python data science company whose name I'm blanking out on at the moment. Okay. He has some crazy design, but he's only got it on Windows, and it's based on a whole bunch of modifications to fundamentals inside C Python, and every time you give him a more complex program to test, he finds more bugs in his approach. So that I don't know if that is actually going to work. And there's really only sort of a subset of Python operations that that system would work for. Then there is again, I'm totally blanking out on names, but there's someone working on what is it called? There's some kind of special so-called I think it's transactional memory. Yeah, I'm sorry for all the didders. And so the proposal for transactional memory is very much still a very early prototype. It's not actually faster than regular threads or even single execution. It's just a proof of concept. And it only works, I mean, again, it sort of changes the language you have to write. So the hope that you can just write regular Python code and sort of put different pieces of Python on different CPUs, different cores, that is very, very far in the future. Okay. And it's unlikely to sort of be the right approach, if you ask me.
Okay. Another question then. Are there some underused features of the newest Python versions that you think they're cool and you would like to talk about them?
Well, I think the most underused feature is actually Python 3 itself. Okay. Too many people have a large code base that is sort of stuck on Python 2.7, and they get by using some of the things that were first designed for Python 3, like set comprehensions or dictionary comprehensions. But there's still a lot in Python 3. Once you really study Python 3, you realize it really is a much better language. But not enough people are actually using that. And sort of the only specific feature that I can think of right away is that Python 3 has this AsyncIO library that I worked on for about a year, ending roughly a year ago, actually. That is a very powerful feature in Python 3 that still sort of needs to find a large enough user base.
Okay, is there anything you would like to tell us about AsyncIO?
Well, AsyncIO lets you handle many different network I/O streams concurrently without using multiple threads.
Okay.
The sort of the way it does that is by multiplexing callbacks for different sockets, essentially. It's usually almost always sockets, although there is an abstraction of transports and protocols that is slightly higher than sockets, but in practice they usually represent sockets. Instead of dedicating a separate thread to each socket, which sort of is a problem because a typical server system can handle way more sockets than it can handle threads. The resources allocated to a single thread are just enormous compared to what it takes to manage a socket. So by doing asynchronous I/O, multiplexing multiple sockets onto a single program, you can handle way more sockets. What AsyncIO mostly does is sort of give you a natural feeling interface where you can start writing code that feels mostly the same as if you were writing sequential code that is just handling input or output for one socket. And yeah, I would recommend just reading the docs for AsyncIO on docs.python.org.
So you think that it is still missing a killer application for the library, right? Something that
AsyncIO is new. It was added to the standard library in Python 3.4. It has experimental status. We're still tweaking the API for every bug fix release for 3.4. We actually change some small feature in AsyncIO based on feedback we've gotten. In 3.5, we'll be much more serious about maintaining backwards compatibility.
Okay. And one more question. Is Python 3 the last major version of the language there will be?
Well, I imagine at some point there might be a Python 4. What sort of my own opinion about language transitions at this point is that I never want to have to go through the kind of transition that we had to go through from Python 2 to Python 3.
Okay.
By the time there is sort of the need for a major step forward, I mean, I imagine that from now on we'll be able to make small steps forward, and there will never be a reason to sort of break with the past in a drastic way like we did with Python 3. So we'll always have a much more gradual transitional path. At some point, maybe after I'm retired, there may be a reason to introduce something called Python 4, but it might be more of a branding statement than sort of a language evolution. I could imagine that Python 4 might have the same fate that Perl 6 has compared to Perl 5. Okay. Larry Wall sort of put all his energy behind Perl 6, and yet the Perl community by and large stuck with Perl 5. We're in a much better situation with Python 3, where all the core developers and many of our users, including much of the scientific and numeric Python world, are actually already on Python 3. And Python 3 really has the sort of the momentum to succeed and to leave Python 2 behind.
So what's on your mind lately about Python? What are you thinking? What are you doing right now? What are you thinking?
Well, the most exciting project I'm doing myself is actually type hinting. A couple months ago, there were hundreds of messages in a number of very large threads, very sort of hot debate about optional static typing. And that debate that overheated and then died out. But what actually happened as a result was I got a lot of clarity about what the design should be and sort of what the constraints on the design are. And I am working with a couple of other people on a new design, and I'm hoping to we are hoping to have something ready for more public discussion soon.
That's great.
And it for the people who follow the original set of threads, it won't be a big surprise, except those threads happened at such a fast pace that almost nobody could actually follow everything that was said. And so a lot of people probably were left in utter confusion about, well, what are we going to do and why are we doing it? And I actually personally have a lot of clarity about that, about sort of what we should do and what we should call it. And I'm not trying to come up with a perfect design before I go public with it, but I want to sort of have a rough design that I feel comfortable with before I open the floodgates of the debate again. I want to sort of have feedback, but not so much that it completely overwhelms me or becomes unclear.
So we can expect a Python enhancement proposal in some future, in the near future.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to be a PEP.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Guido, for your time. That's
my pleasure. And I hope everyone at PyCon Argentina is going to have a great time after this.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bueno, espero que les haya gustado la sorpresa. Se dio medio de casualidad. Hay que agradecer un poco a la gente de Maquinaris, que justo alguien estaba allá y entonces pudo hacer una entrevista a Guido. Para los que no lo conocen, Guido es el creador de Python y el dictador benevolente de por vida de Python, así que es una personalidad muy importante para nuestra comunidad.